The Kashar exploration vessel Vehlari drifted in the silent darkness beyond mapped space. The region was a place few ships traveled, an expanse of emptiness broken only by the cold light of distant suns. The crew had expected nothing more than long-range mineral scans and the occasional small comet until the sensor array lit up with an unexpected reading. "Unregistered contact," reported navigator Sarah, her voice calm but with a thread of curiosity. "Bearing 309 by 12. Stationary large mass signature." Captain Dreen adjusted his head crest, a gesture the crew recognized as deep thought. "Show me." The view screen shifted from the star field to a zoomed image. There it was, a dark, angular shape suspended in the void. It did not spin or drift with the pull of nearby gravity wells. It simply remained fixed, like an ancient marker placed in space. The hull was worn, scarred by what looked like intense impacts, yet its lines were sharp and deliberate. "It's not one of ours," murmured Chief Engineer Varric, leaning toward the display. "That design is unlike anything in Dominion records. No known trading guild or allied species builds with that frame structure." Sensors began compiling details, length, mass, power readings, but the ship's silhouette spoke louder than the data. Its profile suggested both aggression and precision, with armored plating interlocked in geometric patterns. The color was difficult to define, shifting between deep gray and faint bronze depending on the angle of light from the nearby star. "Power output?" the captain asked. "High," replied Sarah after a moment. "Unusually high for a vessel showing no movement. Weapon systems? Unclear. Some readings are masked by interference. Life signs? None detected." A quiet unease settled over the command deck. An uncrewed vessel, fully powered, sitting motionless at the edge of nothing. It was an image that tugged at instinct. The Vehlari moved closer in careful increments, thrusters humming at a low pitch. The alien vessel did not respond. No change in orientation, no active scan returned, yet the Kashar crew felt as if they were under observation. "Ship appears to be in perfect battle posture," Varric noted, his scaled fingers gliding over his console. "Forward battery ports aligned to cover approach vectors. Whoever designed this intended it to be both a warning and a barrier." Drain considered his options. The Kashar Dominion valued exploration, but it also respected caution. Strange vessels in uncharted space could be abandoned relics, or they could be traps. "Long-range scan only," the captain ordered. "Do not transmit. I want to know what it is without alerting it to our presence." As the deep sensors engaged, the ship's systems whispered data back into the Vehlari's computers. Layer by layer, the alien hull resolved in clarity. The plating was denser than standard warship alloys, interlaced with an unknown metallic composite. The vessel's energy core emitted a steady rhythm, slow, deliberate, unlike any standard reactor signature. "It's strange," Sarah said softly. "That power reading is not constant like ours. It rises and falls, almost like—" "Heartbeat," Varric finished for her. The word hung in the air. No one moved for a moment. Even in the vast archive of galactic vessels catalogued by the Dominion, none had been described in such terms. Ships did not have heartbeats. "Captain," Sarah added, her voice tightening, "there's something else. Our sensors are detecting localized microfields across the hull. It's as if the ship is actively adjusting its surface structure. I've never seen this outside of adaptive armor technology, and this is far more refined." Drain's eyes stayed fixed on the screen. The vessel's form was haunting in its stillness. It looked as if it had been waiting there for centuries, yet there was an undeniable sense of awareness about it. The captain gave a low, thoughtful click. "Continue the scan. I want to know exactly what we've found out here." The Vehlari's systems obeyed, sending invisible waves of detection toward the silent ship. Somewhere within that angular frame, unknown processes stirred. The readings would soon reveal more than the crew expected and change the way the Kashar viewed this sector forever. The Vehlari's deep scan waves washed over the unknown vessel like a slow tide. In the command deck's dim light, the crew watched the incoming readings form into patterns and shapes. What they expected to see were the usual signs of a derelict: cold metal, abandoned compartments, maybe fragments of a destroyed power network. Instead, the image that built itself on the holo display told a different story. Outer hull temperature, Sarah reported, is exactly stable. No thermal bleed, no irregularities. It's as if the ship regulates its surface temperature against detection. Captain Drain's head crest lowered slightly, a gesture of intrigue. Any sign of automated defenses? Nothing definitive, Varric replied. But there are weapon-like structures along the dorsal and ventral arcs. Design is unconventional. Their arrangement doesn't match our tactical logic. The captain leaned closer to the display. The warship's dark contours seemed to absorb the star's pale light. Every ridge and panel was smooth yet layered, like overlapping scales on a predator. Despite the lack of movement, the vessel radiated a quiet readiness, as if it could spring to life at any moment. Still no life signs? Drain asked. Sarah hesitated. None. No thermal traces from organic life, no respiration indicators. The ship is completely silent biologically. That should have ended the mystery. An uncrewed ship was unusual, but not unheard of. Yet something about this vessel resisted easy classification. The Vehlari's crew could sense it, though none spoke the thought aloud. The scan penetrated deeper, tracing corridors, bulkheads, and internal compartments. Most were empty, lined with unfamiliar machinery. There were no chairs, no visible control stations, no crew quarters. The architecture was functional, yet strangely elegant, with curves and straight lines woven together in ways that suggested more than efficiency. There was intent, perhaps even artistry. Captain, Varric said, his tone more cautious now. I'm detecting interference. It's not random noise, it's layered, structured. Meaning, Drain prompted, meaning the ship is projecting patterns into our scan, possibly to confuse or mislead us. Drain's gaze narrowed. That capability implied an active system, something aware of being scanned. And yet the vessel had made no overt move, no visible sign of aggression. The crew worked in near silence, each officer focused on their console, eyes darting between data feeds and status lights. The Vehlari's engines purred softly in the background, their steady rhythm contrasting with the growing tension in the room. Finally, Sarah broke the quiet. I have something unusual in the aft section. The material density spikes in a pattern, almost like a lattice. It's unlike any structural reinforcement I've studied. The captain considered. Is it shielding? Not exactly. It's adaptive. The lattice can shift at the molecular level. If that's true, it could alter its properties depending on what it needs to defend against. Varric gave a slow exhale. That's beyond anything the Dominion or its allies can build. The silence deepened. The Vehlari maintained its careful position, keeping a safe distance yet holding the strange ship within scanning range. The crew could feel the weight of the encounter settling in. This was no ordinary discovery. Then a quiet chime echoed from Sarah's station. Captain, I'm picking up a faint emission. Not strong enough to be a transmission, more like a residual field. From what? Drain asked. I can't say. The wavelength is irregular. It's almost biological. The word biological hung in the air like an unspoken challenge. No life signs, no organic presence. And yet something biological in nature was leaving a faint echo inside the ship. The captain straightened. Continue the scan. I want to know exactly what's inside. As the Veilari's systems intensified their probe, the warship's profile on the holo display shimmered briefly. A distortion passed through the image, like a ripple on still water. The readings corrected themselves a moment later, but the effect left the crew exchanging uneasy glances. Far out in the void, the silent ship remained motionless. Its hull reflected nothing, its surface absorbing starlight as though it belonged to the darkness itself. No signal, no maneuver. Yet in the Veilari's command deck, the sense grew stronger that the warship was not merely an object. It was listening. The Veilari's scan beams sliced through the darkness, painting an increasingly detailed map of the unknown vessel's interior. At first, the data seemed strangely consistent. Clean corridors, sealed compartments, power conduits running in, precise lines. But as the scans pushed deeper, the patterns began to change. "Captain," Sarah said, her voice low, "I'm getting variable readings from the central spine of the ship. The energy flow isn't uniform. It fluctuates in cycles." Drain leaned over her console. The display showed a slow wave of power rising and falling through the vessel's core. The rhythm was deliberate, as though the energy wasn't just being consumed, but was being pumped. "Could be a damaged reactor," Varric suggested, though the uncertainty in his tone was clear. Sarah shook her head. "If it were damaged, the fluctuations would be irregular. This is precise. Every pulse is identical in duration and strength. The interval is exactly 4.2 seconds. The captain's crest tilted slightly. "Like a signal?" "Possibly," she replied. "Or something alive." The last word settled into the air like a faint vibration. The Veilari's crew were not strangers to ships with partially biological components. Some species grew their vessels in organic frames, but nothing about this craft's external structure suggested such a design. The deeper scans reached a chamber near the vessel's center. For a moment, the image flickered with interference, as if the ship's systems were resisting their probe. Then, the distortion cleared, and the holo display showed an irregular shape. "What is that?" Varric whispered. It looked like a sphere of overlapping plates, each one shifting minutely as though adjusting itself in response to unseen stimuli. At its heart glowed a faint golden light that pulsed in perfect time with the ship's energy cycle. The plates were laced with fine threads of what might have been circuitry or veins. "I've never seen anything like it," Sarah admitted. "If I had to guess, it's some form of control core." Drain studied the sphere's steady rhythm. "Could it be an AI unit?" "Perhaps," she said. "But if it is, it's unlike any we've documented. The structure is too fluid. It's not fixed like conventional machine architecture." The captain tapped his console. "Mark it for continued observation. I want more readings." The Veilari's sensors obeyed, pouring data streams into the ship's archives. But with each passing moment, more irregularities emerged. The internal temperature gradients were uneven, almost as though the vessel maintained different climates in separate sections. Certain compartments emitted faint magnetic fields that didn't match any power signature. And then there were the patterns, thin, barely detectable traces embedded in the metal itself. "Captain," Varric said, drawing the room's attention, "these aren't random. I think the hull is inscribed with microstructures. Look, when I overlay the readings, they form repeating geometric shapes." On the main display, fine lines of data traced themselves across the vessel's surface map. The patterns were intricate, flowing in loops and arcs that hinted at a language or code. "Could be decorative," Drain suggested. Varric's eyes narrowed. "If it's decoration, it's functional. These shapes are resonant. They could channel energy across the hull, or transmit it." Before anyone could respond, a sudden spike flared on the energy readings. The golden light in the ship's core brightened, its pulse quickening for 3 beats before settling again. Sarah's hands moved quickly over her console. "Captain, The fluctuation happened exactly as our scan focused on the core. It's reacting to us, the command. Deck fell silent. The idea was simple yet unnerving. The ship was aware it was being scanned. Drain's voice was steady but quieter now. Reduce scan intensity by half. Keep monitoring, but do not provoke a stronger reaction. The crew obeyed and the data streams calmed, though the sphere's light seemed almost to dim in disappointment. The captain leaned back, his gaze fixed on the vessel's shadowed form. Every discovery added weight to the mystery. Whatever this ship was, it was no abandoned relic. It was watching them as surely as they were watching it. The Valari's scan arrays adjusted, narrowing their focus to penetrate deeper toward the strange vessel's heart. The interference was stronger now, like walking against an unseen current, but the Dominion's instruments were precise. Layer after layer of armored plating gave way to the internal map, until the data revealed something unexpected. There, Sarah said quietly, marking a section near the ship's forward mid-deck. I'm detecting enclosed spaces, identical in shape, evenly spaced. The holo display zoomed in, resolving the compartments one by one. They were narrow, elongated, and lined in neat rows. Each one held an object, a long, tapered shape, humanoid in outline. Pods, Varric murmured. Dozens of them. The captain's crest shifted slightly. Stasis units? Sarah ran a quick analysis. Yes, energy signatures consistent, with cryogenic suspension. And Captain... She hesitated. Every single one contains an occupant. The deck was silent. They had scanned hundreds of derelicts before, most with empty or damaged cryopods long since abandoned. But these were intact. The systems maintaining them were not just functional, they were flawless. Dren leaned forward. Species? Processing, Sarah said, fingers darting across her console. Data flickered through translation matrices, cross-referencing thousands of known genetic profiles. At last, the computer returned a single classification, unknown. But the display image was clear enough. The beings inside the pods had smooth skin without scales, fur, or plating. Their limbs were proportionate and slender, their faces symmetrical. Even in suspension, there was a quiet determination in their features. They're not in our records, Varric confirmed. No known Dominion contact with this morphology. As the scans refined, another anomaly emerged. Thin conduits ran from each pod into the walls, branching into an intricate web that spread through the entire ship. It was as though the pods were hardwired into the vessel's nervous system. Captain... Sarah's voice carried an edge now. These aren't just passengers. The neural activity patterns, they match the ship's control architecture. Drain frowned. Explain. They're linked to the vessel directly. Every pod is feeding neural signals into the main systems. If I'm reading this correctly, the ship's navigation, weapons, and power management aren't controlled by an AI core. They're distributed across the minds of these beings. The idea settled heavily over the command deck. Varric broke the silence. That means the ship is its crew. It wasn't an expression, but a literal fact. The vessel and the beings inside it were inseparable, two halves of a single existence. Could they be conscious? Drain asked. Sarah checked the readings again. Unlikely. Their brain activity is low, consistent with deep stasis, but... She paused. There's a secondary pattern, a steady signal running between all of them, even in suspension. It's synchronized. The holo display highlighted it. Tiny spikes of identical neural activity repeating every few seconds. Like the ship's power pulses, the minds inside the pods were cycling together, as though sharing the same thought in an endless loop. The captain sat back slowly, his gaze fixed on the silent ship displayed before them. This is no abandoned warship. It's sleeping. Outside, the alien vessel floated unmoving, its dark hull soaking in the faint light of the distant star. The Valari's instruments continued to probe, but now the crew could not help but imagine the beings inside, waiting, linked together in a network of thought and purpose. What could they be waiting for? Varric asked quietly. No one answered. The readings continued to flow, each line of data adding to the sense of something vast and intentional. This ship had not been left to drift. It was here for a reason, its crew preserved and connected, like a single mind lying dormant until the moment came to wake. And now, after who knew how many cycles of stillness, it was being scanned by strangers. The Valari's command deck was quiet except for the soft hum of the scan arrays. Every officer's eyes remained fixed on the image of the sleeping crew, their stasis pods connected like nerve clusters to the ship's own systems. Maintain. Scan focus on the neural link, Captain Drain ordered. Let's see how deep it goes. Sarah adjusted the sensor field, narrowing it to the web of conduits branching from the pods. The moment the tighter scan passed over the network, the readings spiked. Varric frowned at his console. Captain, we've got a return signal. Drain's crest lifted slightly. From the ship? No, from inside the ship. Something sending data back through the scan beam. The exchange was subtle at first, a handful of compressed packets, too small to hold anything meaningful, but they multiplied quickly, stacking into streams of complex symbols. The Valari systems automatically began decoding them. This isn't random noise, Sarah said, her voice tightening. It's structured, looks like visual data. The holo display flickered. Without command authorization, the main screen shifted from the ship's cross-section to an image. Not a scan image, but a memory. The Kashar crew found themselves staring at an unfamiliar world, a sphere of blue oceans and green continents beneath drifting white clouds. The perspective shifted, showing cities of gleaming towers, fields stretching toward the horizon, and great ships gliding through atmosphere. A voice, deep and resonant, spoke in a language the Valari's translators struggled to parse. The words were slow, deliberate, as though meant for those who had never heard them before. The translation came in fragments. Humanity, united, survival. The images changed. Now the cities burned. Sky and ground alike were aflame, storms tearing through landscapes. Towering machines and dark ships rained destruction. The scenes carried no sound except the steady voice. To endure, we became more. The view shifted again, showing vast shipyards orbiting the blue planet. Sleek vessels took shape, each one different, each one alive with intricate details. The warships were built not only from metal and circuitry, but from people. The images showed humans stepping into pod-like chambers, closing their eyes as conduits connected to their temples and spines. We joined, the voice continued, mind to mind, will to steel. In the image, ships launched into the void, moving with a precision no ordinary crew could match. Their movements were fluid, almost organic, every vessel an extension of a singular consciousness. The Kashar crew watched in silence. They were seeing the birth of something unlike any technology they had encountered. Warships that were their crews, bound together in ways beyond artificial intelligence or conventional control. The voice deepened. We guard, we remember, we remain. The images faded, leaving only the outline of the strange vessel the Valari had found. The golden pulse. Within its core flared once like a slow heartbeat answering the intrusion. Sarah's hands hovered over her console. Captain, I didn't initiate a data request. This was sent to us voluntarily. Varric's brow furrowed. Voluntarily, or as a warning. Drain studied the display, his mind turning over the implications. This was no derelict drifting at random. This ship was placed here, perhaps as a sentinel, perhaps as a memorial, perhaps both, and the beings within were not inert passengers. Even in their sleep, they could reach out, share, and remind. The captain's voice was quiet when he spoke. Record everything. Secure the files in a restricted archive. No transmissions until we're clear of this sector. Sarah nodded, but her gaze stayed on the vessel's silhouette. The memory they had just seen carried a weight that felt older than the ship itself, and beneath that weight was the unshakable sense that the warship now knew them, not just as another ship passing through, but as individuals. The crew of the Velari had looked into the past of a species they had never met, and the past had looked back. The command deck of the Velari felt different now. The air seemed thicker, the shadows deeper, as though the ship itself sensed the gravity of what they had just witnessed. No one spoke for a long moment. Then the hum of the long-range sensors shifted in pitch. Sarah's hands moved quickly over her console. Captain, the vessel's energy output is rising, gradual but steady. It's no longer holding to the 4-second cycle. It's accelerating. How fast? Drain asked. Every pulse shortens by a fraction, she replied. At this rate, the core will double its output in minutes. Varric's gaze flicked to the tactical display. Captain, we're also seeing changes in the hull. Those microstructures we identified earlier, they're realigning. The patterns are shifting into new configurations, almost like signal arrays. The golden light within the vessel's core grew brighter, its pulse now clearly visible even on passive scans. As the beat quickened, faint energy ripples began to radiate outward, brushing against the Velari's hull like a silent tide. Is it powering weapons? Drain asked. Varric hesitated. No, at least, not directly. This feels more like a full systems activation sequence. The idea settled over the crew with a cold weight. They were no longer observing a dormant ship. They were standing in the presence of something that was waking up. Without warning, the Velari's main display flickered. Lines of text, unfamiliar, yet instantly recognizable as linguistic symbols, scrolled across the screen before the ship's translation systems could catch up. Then the voice came, not over comms, not as sound waves, but as a direct injection into the Velari's data channels. You have touched the network. The words were calm, almost gentle, but they carried an undercurrent of certainty that silenced. The deck Drain straightened. Identify yourself. There was no pause. Designation: Sentinel-class vessel, human construct, integrated consciousness active. The golden core flared again. Across the hollow display, the stasis pods were no longer in complete stillness. Tiny electrical surges rippled through the neural conduits, linking them to the ship's systems. Sarah's voice was low. Captain, their brain activity is increasing. Not one at a time, all of them at once. The display showed it clearly. Hundreds of neural patterns aligning in perfect synchrony, forming a single vast waveform. Your probe reached the shared mind, the voice continued. The shared mind is aware of you. Drain's hands tightened on the arms of his chair. We mean no harm. We are explorers. Explorers approach with caution. You entered without request. You scanned without permission. The calmness in the voice did not change, but the words carried weight. Varric glanced at the tactical screen and swallowed. Captain, every forward-facing aperture on that ship is live. If those are weapons, they're armed. The golden core's light pulsed faster, now matching the cadence of the unified neural activity. The crew of the Velari could almost feel the presence behind it. A single intelligence with the capacity to think in hundreds of voices at once. Drain kept his tone steady. If we withdraw, will you allow us to leave unharmed? There was A pause this time, not of hesitation, but of deliberation. You are noted. Your vessel is catalogued. You will leave this space. The core dimmed slightly, though the neural patterns within the pods remained active. No further contact is advised. The message ended as abruptly as it began. The core's pulse slowed, but it did not return to its original 4-second rhythm. It stayed alert, steady, as if waiting to see whether the Velari would obey. The captain's decision came quickly. Helm, prepare for controlled withdrawal. Keep shields active until we're clear. As the Velari began to turn away, the alien warship remained motionless, yet the crew could not shake the feeling that its gaze followed them through the void. And in the quiet between pulses, they knew. This ship was not just aware of their presence. It would remember them. The Velari's engines whispered to life, their vibration barely noticeable beneath the tense silence on the command deck. Every officer's attention remained fixed on the tactical display, where the alien warship's dark silhouette loomed against the void. Course plotted, the helm officer confirmed quietly. Minimal thrust to avoid sudden energy spikes. Captain Drain gave a single nod. Engage. The Velari eased forward, slowly turning away from the vessel. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the mysterious craft would allow them to slip away without incident. The golden core's light was steady, and no new activity appeared on sensors. Then the comm channel opened without request. It wasn't a hail in the conventional sense. No carrier signal, no modulation. The voice simply arrived inside their systems, bypassing every layer of encryption as if those barriers had never existed. Your presence here is recorded. Your vessel is known. Drain straightened in his chair. This is Captain Drain of the Kashar exploration vessel Velari. We will comply with your request to leave this region. The voice returned without delay, the calmness of its tone carrying a precision that made every word feel deliberate. Compliance is expected. Future incursions will not be tolerated. Sarah looked up from her console. Captain, their targeting systems just shifted. Every major weapon is locked on us. On the tactical display, faint red arcs extended from the human warship's hull, converging directly on the Velari. There were no fluctuations, no errors, just perfect, unwavering alignment. Varric ran a quick calculation. His voice was low. If they fire, impact would occur before our defense grid could even register the strike. The golden pulse in the vessel's core brightened again, and a faint ripple of static swept through the Velari's bridge audio systems. Then the voice spoke once more. This boundary is not marked on your maps, yet you have crossed it. You will leave. You will not return. Drain kept his own voice even. May we transmit this information to our authorities? Another pause. Not long, but long enough to feel intentional. Yes, they will understand. The phrasing was strange, as though the speaker already knew what the Kashar's leadership would decide once they heard of this encounter. The helm officer glanced at the captain. Captain, I'm detecting an incoming transmission packet. Passive, non-invasive. It's a coordinate set. Sarah overlaid the data onto the navigation chart. The coordinates marked an irregular sphere around the system they were in, an expanse dozens of light-years across. Inside that sphere, the display showed nothing but empty space, uninhabited worlds, and drifting debris. But to the ship out there, it was territory. Varric exhaled slowly. This isn't a patrol line. It's a perimeter. The voice came again, softer now. This space is watched. It will remain watched. The golden light dimmed slightly, and with it, the active targeting reticles faded from the Velari's tactical display. But the feeling of being observed never left. Drain made his decision. Helm, take us out of their perimeter at full sublight speed, no faster than light until we're clear. As the Velari turned toward the edge of the marked coordinates, the human warship remained exactly where it had been, motionless, silent, yet unmistakably alive. Its hull reflected nothing, its edges sharp against the distant stars. Sarah kept her eyes on the tactical readout until the strange vessel finally fell outside sensor range. "We're clear, Captain." Drain didn't look away from the forward screen. "Log everything. This will go directly to the Dominion Council." There was no victory in his voice, only the weight of understanding. Whatever this ship was, whatever its people had once endured, they guarded this space with absolute certainty. And the Kashar now knew the truth. Crossing that line again would not end in conversation. The Velari crossed the perimeter boundary with deliberate slowness, every system tuned for rapid reaction. No one spoke on the command deck. The sound of the engines and the occasional soft chime from the consoles were the only reminders that time was still moving. Finally, Sarah looked up from her sensor array. "We're outside the coordinates they transmitted. No sign of pursuit. No active targeting." Varric didn't relax. "That doesn't mean they're not watching." Drain kept his eyes on the forward display, where the star field shimmered with distant light. Somewhere back there, hidden in that darkness, was the silent warship, still alert and capable of striking before the Velari could even register a threat. "Helm," Drain said quietly. "Prepare for faster-than-light jump. Route us on a vector away from any known inhabited sectors," the helm officer acknowledged, hands moving over the controls. The ship's systems hummed as the FTL drive came online. But before the Velari could make the jump, the comm channel activated again without warning. "Your departure is noted." The voice was the same. Calm, precise, deliberate. But now it carried something else. Not menace, not warning. Something closer to finality. The golden pulse in the human warship's core flared once more on the Vehalari's passive sensors, even from this great distance. And then came a final message. "We remain." 3 simple words, but they carried weight far beyond their brevity. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. Sarah's voice was soft. "Captain, that wasn't just for us." Varric nodded. "It was for anyone who might be listening." Drain understood. The message hadn't been a private farewell. It was a statement, a declaration to the entire void. These humans, wherever they came from, had left their guardians behind, and those guardians were patient. The FTL drive cycled up to full capacity. "Engage!" Drain ordered. The Velari leapt into faster-than-light transit, the stars stretching into streams of silver before folding into the deep blue tunnel of hyperspace. Only when they were safely within Dominion territory did the crew finally exhale. In the days that followed, the ship's logs were copied, encrypted, and delivered to the Dominion Council. Drain's report was concise but carried a tone rarely found in military documentation, caution bordering on respect. The details were reviewed, the imagery examined frame by frame, and the memory transmission from the human warship was replayed dozens of times. When the council convened, the decision was unanimous. The perimeter coordinates provided by the humans were to be marked as a permanent exclusion zone. No Dominion ship, military or civilian, would be permitted to cross it without direct authorization. The ruling spread quietly through Fleet Command. Pilots whispered about a sleeping guardian at the edge of known space. Navigators updated their charts with a sector marked only by a single note: no entry. Dran knew the story would grow with each retelling. Rumors would embellish it. Details would shift, but one thing would remain constant. The image of that ship, scarred but unbroken, holding its place in the void as if the centuries meant nothing. He found himself thinking about the memory they had been shown. The blue world, the burning cities, the choice those humans had made to merge mind and machine, not to dominate, but to survive. and the way they had left part of themselves behind to ensure no one crossed into their space uninvited. Weeks later, during a routine system check, the Valari's comm logs recorded an anomaly, a faint, low-frequency pulse, one that matched the heartbeat rhythm of the human warship, echoed through the channel for precisely 4 seconds before vanishing. No origin point could be traced. Dren didn't need one. Somewhere far away, in the uncharted dark, the Sentinel was still there, still watching, still waiting. We remain.